Howdy, folks. Happy Wednesday. Happy hump day. We are here. We've got lots to talk about, lots of games from last night, some interesting outcomes that I'm sure that will be part of the chatter in the chat room as well as ours. We'll have Kevin Allen here and maybe Eck later in the show. We'll start with some pre-show stuff. Go ahead, Russ.
Well, Mike, you're a friend of mine. O.J. Simpson is back in the news. This time he was on location at his barbershop, and he decided he would interject about the Myles Garrett case, which is going on right now in New York City.
I was going to say, is he doing like a LeBron James, like The Shop? He's doing like
it's worse than that. He's literally out front, and he can't filter out all the traffic noise, and people are walking in and out. So it's that low budget. And, he's like, OJ's like, well, people have been texting me about Myles Garrett, and this has happened forever in the NFL. He's got that laugh, and it's like, yeah, the optics were bad, but, he's going to lose a couple $1 million. This is a lot. There's a lot of hyperbole going on when discussing this. He tried to use every big word he could. He mentioned that he just went out to dinner with a bunch of Hall of Famers. He is doing his best to be relevant, and it's like, dude, shut up. The guy could have killed someone.
There's no better optics, and no worse optics than O.J. Simpson's name still being on the wall at New Era Field. That's the worst optic in the world. The fact that the former slashing running back, and passenger of the white Bronco.
Even though it doesn't work perfectly, I had to tweet and I said, while he's defending Myles Garrett, I said, at least he didn't say if the helmet fits, you must acquit. And I tweeted that to OJ because I want him to know the lunacy that this is.
Yeah, see, this is the thing. What have been the last two public announcements of OJ? One, Andrew Luck retiring, and the fact that he had drafted him in his fantasy pool.
Right.
Yeah, and now Myles Garrett. It's like, OJ, I hate to break this to you. You don't work for NBC Sports anymore. And even when you did, nobody gave a crap about your opinion anyway, because all you were was a former great player who they were using as window dressing.
Yep.
So I would rather watch Pete Axthelm, and he's dead, I believe.
Pete's dead.
Yeah, Pete's dead. But so is Jimmy the Greek.
Yeah, it's just, to me, it's just amazing. Like, this is why the iPhone is a bad invention, because a guy like OJ could use it.
Yeah, I'm almost sure, and I can't remember what show it was on. It was on a podcast, and they were interviewing Ron Goldman's sister. And Ron Goldman's sister is doing a podcast. And Ron Goldman's sister was actually serious about inviting OJ on the podcast.
Oh, boy.
And I'm like, okay, if you're really, first of all, he would never come on. Second of all, if you're really would I consider interviewing the person who murdered my brother? No, even if I put money in my pocket. I didn't understand the motivation for that, but okay, whatever.
You have to say allegedly murdered you, Mike,
Yeah, okay. Well, not guilty in criminal court, guilty in civil court. And I have to tell you, anybody who is interested in that, in OJ or that subject, the documentary on ESPN that won an Oscar. I think it was called OJ Made in America.
Yeah.
It is incredible, absolutely incredible. And if you're at all interested, God knows we've heard enough stories about it. But if you're looking for like an inside view of that situation, that it was absolutely.
You're a fan of OJ still.
And no, I'm not. No, not me.
No, I'm kidding.
No, I won't tell the story because I think I've told you before. But there's a story involving OJ back in the 90s when he was here covering for NBC Sports, and he was at a sports bar, and I happened to be in the same sports bar that I won't go into. It's just But I also have to say there is a fantastic documentary that I saw on Showtime about Sonny Liston that and anybody who's a boxing fan, and I was in the past, and if boxing ever came back again from the depths of what it's been now, the depths that it's descended to now, I would be a fan of it again, even though it's a brutal sport. But this documentary was fantastic. I highly recommend it to anybody who likes boxing or sort of the inside stuff, and also the stuff. Everybody looks at Muhammad Ali as this sainted guy.
I don't.
Well, I know a lot of people that
the Razor fan growing up in that era. Trust me, I don't.
Yeah, and if you watch this, the whole name calling and basically he browbeat Liston into fighting him. Like Liston was living in Philadelphia, and he would like go outside of his house and chant certain things, and not terrorize him, but like he's getting into his car and Ali is banging on the window. I mean, it really stuff now that you could get arrested for harassment.
I mean, I was a young. I was 1 year old, 2 year old when that fight happened, but obviously I'd seen enough on it. That whole fight was crazy.
Well, and Funky in the chat saying the second Ali Liston fight was fixed. All I know is they had the video of it, the film of it, and at best, the right hand that Ali hit Liston with was a rabbit punch. It was just like a quick.
Right.
And may have hit him on the jaw, but based on like Liston did not have a bad chin.
No.
It was like, I'm very questioning whether
the whole world is. I still have never seen the punch that connected.
Well, it did connect. I mean, they had
connected,
it looked like a tap.
Yeah, let's say connected enough to knock him out.
Yeah.
I've still yet to see that punch.
Yes. All right, we'll get started. Hello, Hockey World. Today is Wednesday, November 20th, 2019.
I'm Russ Cohen from Sportsology. I never said the Islanders were lucky. That's a lie.
And I'm Michael Agello, and this is the HockeyBuzzcast here on HockeyBuzz.com. But I did say the Islanders are not making the playoffs, and I stick by that. What other choice do I have? Because if I go against it, everybody's going to say, no. I mean, I still think that they're a flawed team. They're hot right now. We'll start there because Russ and I were going back and forth on the, either talking on the phone or texting back and forth last night. And we're like, hey, Pittsburgh's up 3-0. And then Pittsburgh's up 4-2 in the third period. Then we look and it's 5-4 Islanders winning. And Russ, they're the hottest team in the league right now.
I mean, look, that team believes in themselves to the point where they could run through walls. I get it. But right now, they could be the best team in hockey, and I'm still going to think that they're the best team of the regular season. Mm-hmm. And so that's more than I thought, but they're still not a good scoring team. I mean, that 5 goals is a lot of goals for them.
Yeah, and right now, and we mentioned this earlier, right now, and I don't know if somebody can give me a link to a site that provides good Corsi numbers, that kind of analytical information, I would appreciate it in the chat. But I have been told that the Islanders are, I would say, in the bottom third of the league in terms of Corsi, in terms of puck possession, and so they're flying in the face of what the conventional wisdom is in terms of possessing the puck, and that being a key to winning, because they're not possessing the puck. They're depending on keeping the other team's offense to the outside and relying on defense and goaltending and opportunistic offense to win. And so far it's working.
Yeah. I mean, we always said they have the best staff in hockey. There's no question. Best, between front office, coach, goalie coach, no question. Nobody would ever question that. Matter of fact, Lou Lamoriello made a joke, and he actually cracked a joke in the press box the other day at the Flyers game, and I laughed, and it was funny, and it was the first time I had ever seen him do that. But
is he going to the Catskills this weekend?
It wasn't on the par with that, but it was funny. It really, I just didn't expect it to come from Lou.
Try the brisket.
Yeah, but it was funny. So he does have that side. As a whole, though, they are still lacking some scoring. Now, they've also not had many injuries to deal with, and that does aid to what they're doing in the hot streak. Even if they get first place in the Metro. Even if they beat out Washington, I don't believe they can beat Washington in a series. I don't know if they can go past the second round. Now, they have $5 million in cap space. So you can mark this down, Funky Cold Zadina, and whoever else you want. If they go and spend that $5 million at the deadline and get a couple scorers, then anything is possible if they are still playing this way. But right now, as they're currently constructed, they aren't going far in the playoffs unless they have some changes there. And that's meaning adding some scoring. And I don't think I'm alone in that. But you can't rip the Islanders now, and I wasn't going to rip them anyhow. I mean, matter of fact, I'm probably going to write an article about them because being in that locker room, I could feel what we're seeing on the ice.
And more than likely, if they do make those acquisitions at the deadline, they're going to be rentals because they have to sign Barzal to an extension.
Right.
And they really don't have any leeway to sort of create room unless they decide to trade guys like Boychuk or Letty or, some clear salary that way. So they're going to have to keep that space open to get Barzal. And I'm assuming Barzal is going to want, a contract in the Marner Eichel range, 10.1 to 10.9 on a 7 or 8 year deal or something like that. And this is where, I know that
look, Mike, the Islanders will have plenty of money with the new arena coming in once the Wilpons sign that check.
I know that it's a popular urban legend that if Lou Lamoriello had stayed in Toronto for one more year, that he would have gotten Marner, Matthews, and Nylander signed for a lot less than Kyle Dubas did. And
maybe done it before then, though.
Right. Well, that's what I'm saying. Maybe that's true, but I don't think there's any way to prove it. Right. And with Darren Ferris, who has the the MO of, and we're going to find this out with Taylor Hall, because I think Taylor Hall is not going to sign and he'll end up getting traded. It doesn't matter who the GM is. That player is going to go force it to go to free agency. Now, maybe he could have gotten things more economical than Dubas. We don't know. There's no way to know for sure. I mean, Matthews, maybe I think they could have gotten him a little bit less. Especially on if you're going to pay him 11.6, maybe you get him on 7 or 8 years instead of 5.
Look, I mean, there's no question that if Lou Lamoriello and I walk into a Lexus dealer, he's going to get his cheaper than me.
Sure,
because he's going to wait. Like I was once in a Volkswagen dealer, no joke, buying a used Passat wagon, a really good car, which I still have, which I guess at the time was worth about $30,000, something in that range, and I was in there for 4 or 5 hours. Until they finally acquiesced. I was getting texts from different people about this is when like the internet started to be your friend before CarMax was really in vogue. When I was starting to get pricing from other dealers and everything, and they finally just succumbed, right? But that's what it takes.
Yeah. Esmer in the chat, and we're going to do this more often, guys. So if I see something in the chat while in the course of the conversation, we're going to put it in there and interject and interact with you guys, because I think that's probably better than saving questions until the end of the show. But Esmer says Sorokin said he won't extend in the KHL and will want to go to the NHL next season. Well, I mean, that probably means that they let Grice go because Grice is in the final year of his contract.
Right.
And then Sorokin being, they'll have Varlamov and him, and maybe he plays as the backup.
If Lou decides he could be the backup, he still may make him start in Bridgeport. But this is another positive step. Look, Dobson's, played 6 games so far for the Islanders. Wahlstrom got sent down, but at some point he'll be up. It may not be for another year, though.
They can't send Dobson down to the AHL.
No. So he's playing. So
he's either playing
or he's sitting.
Right. I will bet you anything he goes to the World Junior.
No, I agree. I could see that happening, but those are the options for Dobson. There's no other options. Wahlstrom, obviously, they sent down. So, they have guys on the farm. They have another potential goalie there. Like, those kinds of things are looking good for the Islanders. There's no question. But at some point, they do need to get more scoring in that lineup. I will beat that drum forever. Now, the differentials on their side right now, we've seen this, though. Like, you can go on an amazing hot streak, and then all of a sudden an injury or two, and then, you got problems. So we'll see. But so far, so good for them.
Now the Bruins beat the Devils 5-1. Matt Grzelcyk got 2 goals, and one of them, PK Subban is still looking for his jock.
Yeah, he just destroyed him.
It's not with Lindsey Vaughn.
No, and you know what? And to not be fair to PK, it was a good joke. Not to be fair to PK Subban, he sort of olayed that. I mean, Matt Grzelcyk is not a big guy. If there would have been an impact, I'm pretty sure PK Subban would have won that. But he really avoided any kind of contact, and at that point, Grzelcyk just took the puck around him. That was a surprising play on Subban's part, not on Grzelcyk. You know I've been high on Grzelcyk. I talked about him on this show. I've gotten static when I said he could be the replacement for Torrey Krug. I got definite static from that. I will say it again. He could be the replacement for Torrey Krug.
Now, who was it? Davy Jones in the chat brings up.
Is he the monkey singer? No, he's dead. Sorry.
No, that's actually David Bowie.
No. Davy Jones was the Monkees lead singer.
No, I know, but David Bowie's real name was Davy Jones.
Yes. That's
he asks about Laviolette being fired before Christmas. People have sort of slept on this. Nashville has collapsed.
They have.
They're now 9-8-3. They're tied with San Jose. They have 21 points. So after that red hot start where they were scoring goals like crazy, they've slumped. When we talked about this before the season, we were always talking about like the shelf life of coaches, and that was one that if he didn't have success in Nashville, that he may have to worry about that.
Well, I mean, if you do fire a coach before Christmas, you have to do it like the 22nd, because otherwise, once you get close to it, the PR blowback is awful, as we've seen happen. So,
what is it? The unofficial Brian Burke rules about Christmas firings?
Yeah. Now let's see. So it looks like Carl Taylor is the coach in Milwaukee. I don't think
vodka.
I don't think they would have him replace him. Who are his assistants? Who are Lavi's assistants?
I don't know.
I gotta look. Because that's a possibility.
Well, I mean, yeah, and I'm just looking up their. I mean, they're 9-8-3 right now, and I believe they did lose last night. Let's see, or they won there were 13 games last night. No, they didn't play last night. Okay, but
they didn't lose last night, Mike.
They didn't lose last. No, they lost 2-1 to the Jets.
No, they did lose last night.
So only one goal out of a team that was scoring like crazy earlier in the season. So teams have adjusted, and if you don't score, you're not going to win.
Hold on, I may have the name here.
Okay, well, while you do, I'll just touch on a couple other games. I want to save some of these teams for when Kevin comes on the show. We have to talk about the Flyers game.
Mm-hmm.
Panthers win 5-2. I was very happy for Andy Frost, who's the dad of Morgan Frost, who made his NHL debut last night and scored a goal in his first NHL game, which is great. I mean, I've followed Morgan since he was 17 years old, playing for Sault Ste. Marie. Went to a few games. He was drafted in the first round at the 2017 draft. He was. A lot of people projected him sort of middle second round, and the Flyers moved up to get a first round pick to draft him. He's had played in the World Junior last year. He's had a great junior career, playing fairly decently in Lehigh Valley, and
he's having a good year. He wasn't like a standout, but he was having a good year. There were times when he was standing out, but he was I was pointing out to people like a couple weeks ago, it wasn't like he was a top 10 guy in the league yet, but. Yeah, he did have a nice goal last night, which they played on loop because they wanted to get rid of the fact that this was an awful game for the Flyers, and they were trying to not talk about it. By the way, Dan Lambert, they just hired him this year as an assistant in Nashville, and he was the Spokane Chiefs coach.
Okay, so if we're talking firing here.
He could be the guy.
Well, either he could be the guy, or they either wait till next year, or somebody comes.
I'm just saying, if they're going to insert someone this year, they just inserted him. They may have inserted him on just with that thing in mind, like, hey, down the road, maybe, this could be the guy if something were to go wrong.
Based on Poyle's history with USA Hockey, is there a USA Hockey guy out there, Dan Bylsma?
No, he's not higher than Dan Bylsma.
I'm just saying, guys who are not head coaches
Yeah.
That are USA.
I don't think that always has to be the case. I don't.
No, I do. It doesn't. I'm just saying, you know, I'm looking at tendencies because Laviolette's a USA Hockey guy.
No, I'm going with Dan Lambert on this. But back to the Flyers. So a few things. All right. So Carter Hart. We talked about it. Not everybody wanted to admit to it, but a lot of times the second-year goalie, especially when you have to start off a season, have troubles. Mm-hmm. He's having troubles. You know, he was a 903 before yesterday. Let's see what he's sitting at today as a save percentage. I'm sure right now I'm picking out the worst part of his career, but this is all we got. He's 6-5-2 with an 896. So guaranteed 90% of the fan base and the staff didn't expect that. So now, you know, Brian Elliott's going to play more. So now you have that factor. Mm-hmm. Defense. Their defense is slow-footed. I'm glad you saw that last night.
Yeah.
When Barkov could literally just skate around guys twice before they even get near him, you've got a problem because Barkov's not even the fastest guy in the league. But he's fast and he's strong and he's big. The centers now on the Flyers, now that you put Giroux back at center, while he's really good at faceoffs, the centers are lacking speed. Couturier is not the fastest guy in the world. He's above NHL average, but he is not the fastest guy in the world. They had Frost at center, but you saw he didn't take off faceoffs. They wouldn't even use him in the defensive zone for faceoffs, which is fine. Mm-hmm. But at the end of the day, they're a little slow foot speed now, centers. So centers and defense, that's where your speed's supposed to be generated in this league. And they have a little of it because also Hayes is a decent skater for his size. He is. But he's not what you would call fast. And so that's right now, they've got big down the middle, which might help them if they ever get to the playoffs. But you got to get to the playoffs. And right now, getting to the playoffs is going to be a struggle because they struggle scoring. This team, you could say what you want. They spent a lot of money, but they are struggling to put the puck in the net. And, you know, that's right now something they're going to have to do something about. You know, Joe Farabee had 2 horrendous turnovers yesterday. One went right in the net. At some point, they're going to have to look at that situation because if he doesn't turn it around, mm-hmm. you don't want to ruin this kid's confidence. That's the last thing you want to do.
Now, people may question my sanity but for me saying this, but I actually watched a lot of the Minnesota-Buffalo game. And I've come to the conclusion, and I came to this conclusion at the beginning of the season, that the Sabres are in really deep trouble. They really didn't – I know that they made a concerted effort. Jason Bauer made a concerted effort to make some changes in the offseason to add to the depth of the team. But really, they brought back the same team. Other than Jason Pominville not re-signing him, they brought back essentially the same team and added Jokiharju, Colin Miller, VC, Marcus Johansson. I think Jokiharju's played okay. Alex Nylander's actually played well for Chicago, so that's been a beneficial deal. You know, change of scenery for both guys.
Yeah.
Colin Miller has played okay, but right now because they have so many defensemen, he's found himself as a healthy scratch a couple times in the last week.
So many defensemen, but really we're talking about so many like average defensemen.
Well, that's okay. That's you're going where I'm gonna take us. But they can't score, except if your name was Jack Eichel. And you know he scored. The only game that they've won in the last 9 games was when he scored 4 goals. They're 1-6-2 in the last 9. They lost 4-1 to the Wild, who the Wild were coming into the game were the worst record in the NHL, now second worst to I think LA. And the injury problems. Johansson is out, even though he wasn't doing well offensively. Kyle Oposo was concussed again, and I really have significant question about whether he should continue his career based on how many concussions. And if you saw the incident that caused this concussion, it was sort of a side swipe incident. It wasn't like a head hit or something like that. When you're that tentative,
he might be at that point where it's going to happen more often, more frequently.
But this is where I'm going here. It's like Marco Scandella is basically a 5'6", making $4 million. You can trade him probably closer to the deadline if you retain salary, but you're not going to get a ton for him. Zach Bogosian is a injury-plagued guy who he just cannot stay healthy. He's supposedly a few days away, which means he's a week or so away from another injury.
Right.
The guy that everybody, and now the chatter is starting to happen again, not because he's not playing well, but because he's the only viable. Sorry, here. I'm just copying the. Oh, sorry. Hold on. Just copying the link here for Kevin, who's trying to get into the show here.
Okay.
1 second. Okay, there we go. Bogosian's untradeable. I mean, even though he's a rental, maybe at the end of the year, if somebody needs a right-hand shot defenseman, Ristolainen is playing okay, but if they want to get forward help that will make a difference, Ristolainen is the guy you need to move because he'll bring back something of significance. Their problem is now, after 20 some odd games, they've ended up being the same team that they were last year, in the sense that right now, I'm trying to get Kevin in here. There we go. Hey, Kev.
Hi, guys. Sorry, I'm so late.
All right.
An 18-minute trip from the airport. Today it was 43 minutes. So.
Wow.
Well, you're here now, so that's great.
Yeah.
We saved all the struggling teams and trade chatter and talk about the GM's meetings for you.
Yeah.
We're touching on the Sabres because I've seen a lot of them over the last few weeks, and they've lost 8 of their last 9. They've been struck by injuries. Marcus Johansson is out. Kyle Poso is concussed again, even though I think he only had 1 goal. And now the chatter is they have an overloaded defenseman. Bogosian is about to come back. They have 9 healthy defensemen. And now the chatter about Ristolainen has popped up again because they're not going to get a great return for Marco Scandella or for Bogosian, but they will get a return for Ristolainen. And right now, their biggest problem is, other than Eichel, Reinhart, and Skinner, nobody scores on this team, Cap.
Yeah, and it feels like we've seen this before. Last season where they, had that long winning streak, and then they just disappeared, and nobody knew quite what to do. I'm not sure trading Ristolainen is the answer. I've said that before. But we are getting to the point where something has to be done because there's obviously not enough there. But I agree with your assessment of that too. The one-line teams have had success in the NHL in the past, but there has to be an incredible line. And as much as I like those younger players, Eichel and Reinhart, I just don't know that they're ready to do that. So something big has to do, and I'm sure Abato is feeling the pressure there. I mean, the Buffalo fans have been waiting for something to happen. They've had Eichel for a while now, and they're waiting for it. The problem with trading away Ristolainen, and this is always the case, and Russ can verify this, but it's not a state secret. But if you trade away a top defenseman, suddenly your biggest need becomes a top defenseman. And they have Dahlin. I mean, I get that. And he's the, elite level, but it's just so hard to fill those roles once you have those guys. So,
and Ross, the factor is that the two of the 3 names I mentioned in Bogosian and Scandella, they're both UFAs at the end of the year. Now, I don't think there's any interest in re-signing these guys unless it's for significantly less than they're making right now. But if you trade Ristolainen, then you're trading a left-hand D and 2 right-hand Ds over a certain age. You're trading 3 or letting go 3 veteran defensemen. I don't know if they're getting a defenseman back in any potential Ristolainen deal. I would assume that they're going to trying to get forward help, and all of a sudden that makes their defense. It'll be a lot of changeover on the blue line.
They're in the worst possible spot in this league because if you're at the very bottom, you get rewarded with a high draft pick, maybe a top 5 pick. Or if you're in the middle, you don't really get anything. You get middle of the draft, you get not enough wins, your fans aren't happy, and you're not happy because you thought at the beginning of the year you would be one of the contending teams, and now you're in that gully. And it's hard to get out of that gully, like Kevin was alluding to, really. And they have to, I don't think they have the veterans to trade, and I don't think trading Ristolainen is the answer. They might have to trade someone like Middlestat or somebody like that, or Reinhart, like we said before, to really get something, because otherwise they have too much youth and they're lacking just enough veterans to make headway. And, Okposo is just horrible luck. I mean, that's just a thing that's going to haunt them for a while, but that's where they're at.
Yeah, and Reinhardt's a tricky situation, Kev, because he's an RFA at the end of the year. He signed a bridge deal, so he's coming off a bridge deal. He scored 30 goals last year. He's probably on pace to score 30 this year. And they could be in the same situation, although, Skinner was a UFA. They're going to have to spend significant money to re-sign Reinhardt to a long-term contract, and they've got players like Dahlin who they're probably going to have to sign to a long-term deal in the next year or so. I don't know if they want to spend the kind of money that they would probably have to spend on Reinhardt to get him locked up, and that he might be a trade possibility, even though it's sort of counterproductive because they need scoring. But why would you trade a guy who scores?
Yeah, no, I don't see them trading Reinhart. I don't. In today's cap, you can have, and no one proves that more than the Maple Leafs, that you can have 4 or 5 guys that you can pay top dollar to.
Look how well it's working out for
Not necessarily working, but you can do it.
We'll go in a sec after you make your point.
Yeah, but I mean, you've got I just don't know how you're ahead by trading one of your quality young players. I would be more inclined to trade a Middlestat, hoping that you can get an established player for a guy with some potential.
Right. And, trade Middlestat would be the first one for me too. But I would trade Reinhart if I could get a better playmaker, because they're full of goal scorers. They don't have playmakers on that team.
But goal scorers are hard to find. So
but they happen to have some, but they don't have any playmakers to really enhance the goal scorers, because even Jeff Skinner's only got 8 goals.
I agree with that, but we knew he wasn't going to duplicate last season.
And there's a contributing factor to that, Kev. They moved him, and purposely, and I think it was a right move to make. They moved him to the second line, hoping they could generate offense on a second line. And Johansson's playing out of position at center. That's the problem. Now Johansson's hurt. They have Evan Rodriguez playing as their second line center, or sometimes Middlestat, they're spotting him in there, and that's just not going to work. And really, they traded Ryan O'Reilly. They didn't get enough in the deal. They've never been able to replace him, and now everybody's looking for a second line center.
Yeah, no, and we said back then when they shouldn't have traded Ryan O'Reilly. I never understood that.
I actually was saying they should, because of the way he acted in the locker room. I have to admit that.
I never thought that was a good idea. But the other thing is I heard this trade rumor where Steve Yzerman has offered his first round draft pick in 2022.
Oh,
now that gives him 2 more years to draft. So he'll get the guy he took last year, Morris Snyder, and then he'll have 2 other drafts, and then he figures, well, if I haven't turned it around by then
I'm be fired anyway.
Yeah. Right. So you trade that. Well, I would consider, if I was Buffalo, I'd consider that as well. Start trading future. I wouldn't give away my draft pick this year, but I would.
Nobody is. I brought that up a couple of weeks ago, Kev. Nobody's going to, and without it being at least lottery protected, but really nobody's going to trade their first round pick this year. So that currency now is going to be hard to come by. So yeah,
right.
I can see 22s being floated.
Yeah, so I also could see future, number 1s being traded, and like that. If you're willing to trade Middlestat and a first round draft pick from 2022, you might be able to get the help that you need without giving up a Sam Reinhart or Ristolainen. And that's what you got to do. I mean, there's some talent on this Buffalo team. They just need to get some more proven players to go with it.
Now, here's an example. Do you make that trade? Would Zach Parise be willing to do that trade? as an example.
I doubt it. I don't see him leaving Minnesota.
Yeah.
But why wasn't Buffalo in on Robbie Fabre?
It's a good question.
Yeah.
Well, that would have been
a great guy to get, actually.
Right. Yeah, and there was no. I think there are other guys out there like that that just have an ability to be able to move in and create some secondary scoring. And, may not be able to contribute physically or do some other things, but and it didn't cost Detroit a lot. So.
Yeah, Detroit's been in on the last couple of guys like that when nobody's done it. And then we even asked, like New Jersey got the one available goalie. There are a lot of GMs, Kev, that don't want to make a move, it seems, until at least American Thanksgiving, and they're sort of like trying to stick to that.
Now, the two teams that are garnering a lot of discussion right now start with Calgary. 0-4-1 in their last 5 games. They're averaging less than 3 goals per game, and this is the team that was best in the West last year.
50 wins last year.
Yeah. Monahan and Gaudreau have 13 points in over 20 games, so they're averaging well below a point per game. And I don't buy it, Kev, but I want to get your point of view on it. There's beginning to be some chatter about Gaudreau being traded. It makes absolutely no sense, especially from a team, again, like Buffalo. Why, when you're needing offense, why are you supposedly shopping or listening on a trade for your best or second best scorer? It makes no sense.
Yeah, what's going on in Calgary, too, is really kind of an illustration of the difference between a team playing well and a team not going well. Like last year, the Flames could do nothing wrong, and they had 50 wins, and they just looked terrific. And, I just assumed they'd come back, and even if they didn't win 50, they'd win 48.
Sure.
And all of a sudden, Gaudreau and Monahan have 4 starts to the season, and they don't even look remotely like the same team. And that's really been the problem. So I don't think there's really any thought that they're going to trade Gaudreau. I think this is a case of, there's 2 ways of thinking. Either you make a bold move. I was just talking about this today with someone about the Toronto Maple Leafs. Like everybody's just waiting for them to do something, either fire Babcock or make a move to, again, change the defense up a little bit. But, contrast that to the Dallas Stars, who went through a period where they got to a horrible start. And what did they do? They did nothing. They waited it out, and guys worked their way through it. And now Jamie Benn, who looked ridiculous at the start of the season, suddenly is a hot player again. And that the Dallas Stars are one of the hottest teams in the NHL.
Yeah,
they had the personnel. Yeah. I think the difference here with Calgary is the media there does seem to want to hang it on Johnny Gaudreau, because I heard it again on Hockey Central, and I'm not buying it. Matter of fact, if I were Bill Peters, I would just open things up a bit more offensively and let those guys do what they're going to do, because your differential is already -11, but your goal scoring is horrible. Like Minnesota has played 3 fewer games and only is 5 goals behind Calgary. Calgary should have more goals. So at the end of the day, maybe everybody should stop trying to be that copycat, play extreme defense if you don't have the players to do it.
Yeah, and Calgary, I think their problem is, teams can concentrate on Gaudreau and Monahan because guys like Furlick and Bennett and Jankowski, all the secondary guys, are not scoring at all. So all they have to do is put their best checkers on Monahan and Gaudreau, and if they suffocate them, they're going to win the game. So, I don't think, and there's been talk about them possibly trading TJ Brody or Hamonic if they can't get a new contract out with him. So, there's a lot of stuff going on there. Now,
but here's the other thing too, Mike. Where in the world, why should David Rittich have played like 18 games already?
Yeah, I don't get it. Well, Talbot actually has played more than I thought he's played, because I think he's played 7 games. That's, I'm used to the Leafs treatment of backups where it's only second at back-to-back and it's only like 4 or 5.
What do you think? How many career games do you think David Rittich has played? Career?
Less than 100.
Yeah, 85 games.
Yeah.
So you're going to play him 60 games this year, 55 games?
Yeah, I think that right now that's the plan, and I think it's a bad plan. Now, Kev, I'd be remiss if I didn't go down the Leaf road here because it's everybody's talking about it. They played a much better game last night against Vegas, but like they have in some of the last few games, they were completely undone by their special teams, which was the penalty killing. They gave up 2 power play goals, and they worked really hard to tie the game. They were down 1-0 for most of the second period, and then go into the third, and Jason Spezza scored a gorgeous goal. And 42 seconds later, Tyson Barrie gives the puck away, and Thomas Nosek scores a goal to put Vegas right back. Then they give up another power play goal, and it was pretty much over with. Even though the Leafs really didn't quit, they had an opportunity to tie the game. But that's 6 losses in a row, 5 in regulation. Everybody is calling for Babcock's head. I'm not, because I think I don't think that Kyle Dubas wants to put Sheldon Keefe, who will be the next Leaf coach. I mean, at least the next permanent coach. They might go interim if they fire Babcock, but I don't think he wants to put Sheldon Keefe in the position of taking over this team with the mess that they are right now. And I think right now this is sort of squarely on the players, but Babcock needs to take some heat because there are certain things that they're doing that are very Babcockian, and he's fairly inflexible when it comes to what he believes in.
Yeah, no, all that is true. I talked to a general manager who told me, I asked him what he thought, whether he thought Mike Babcock would be fired. He goes, absolutely not. He said the only people who think that that's a possibility are the media and the fans. He said, if you talk to people around the league, no one just sees that as happening. Now, could it happen at the end of the season? Yes. But, no one believes that roster is good enough, is what he told me. That, the defense, even though it was revamped, still is not the kind of defense that can carry you when things are not going well and things aren't going well. And, they've had major, or let me rephrase that, significant injuries to Tavares and now Mitch Marner. And what are they? It's 5-1, right? Since Marner went down. So, Babcock didn't suddenly forget how to coach, but aren't we at least surprised? And I'm a Babcock supporter. I've watched him, but aren't we at least surprised that there's been no correction whatsoever? Like I have not seen any when I watched them play. I've no indication that they're doing things any differently.
He's like the captain of the Titanic. I mean, he's acting the same way.
Well, I did pick up yesterday on them playing, I think, more conscientiously and more energetically in their own zone. But the problem is that they're the type of hockey. And I've always referred to this as a philosophical divide between Kyle Dubas and the type of hockey that Mike Babcock wants to play, and the type of hockey that his players provided to him by Kyle Dubas can play are night and day. I don't think that guys like Nick Patan, who's an offensive guy, and Jason Spezza, who's a veteran but primarily an offensive guy throughout his career, can play the heavy hockey that Mike Babcock wants. That's why guys like Freddie Gauthier, who's a limited player, and Nick Shore, who's a specialist on the fourth line, are playing because they're the only ones available to him to play the type of game that he wants to play. And that's I think when your GM and your coach are not on the same page, I think that's detrimental to your team. Now, Kev, you were in Detroit when Babcock and Holland were there. I always perceived them being on the same page.
Yeah, I think for the most part, there was some disagreement, particularly about players. And I think Kenny Holland was respectful of the idea that a coach has got to coach and a GM's got to be the GM. So I think when Babcock wanted specific players, he tried to accommodate them. Right. Just because I think Holland did appreciate what Babcock could do. He always told me and told many others as well that he's never seen anybody that prepares a team for a specific game like Babcock does. That he thinks he really understands what the other team is doing and prepares his team. Now, we haven't seen much of that this season. So I don't know. I think there was tension there in Detroit as well, but I don't think it's nearly as pronounced as it's been in Toronto. And, I feel sorry for Kyle Dubas because he's a young general manager still trying to, earn his spurs. And, he's got as you described him, a guy that I want to do things my way type coach. And I think it is a difficult position to be in. But, I liked what Toronto did in the offseason, but I never thought it was that it was enough.
Right, and the Tyson Barrie move I liked a lot because I've seen Barrie how he played in Colorado and thought, okay, that's a good fit. He's going to move the puck. He's going to be the point guy on the power play. They'll use Morgan Riley 5-on-5 more because Barrie can take care of the power play as the quarterback, and he's got a better shot than Riley. And what have they done? Riley's still the point man on the number one power play. He's playing over 25 minutes, and because I think he's playing too much, he's getting burned defensively on 5-on-5 situations. And Barrie has played the worst hockey of his career, and that's where. Yeah, go ahead, Russ.
When the Rangers got Keith Yandel, it's the same thing. Everybody's like, Keith Yandel's terrific, but Keith Yandel's only terrific on the top pair on the top power play.
Right.
If he's not terrific. And I think that's what we're learning about Barrie. Now, the other situation that I found, because yesterday, last night, and this morning, because the Leafs game was late, I'm noticing now that, and I don't know if you've seen this, Kev, but losing coaches, if you're on a losing streak now, they are now going by the same playbook.
Yeah.
Alain Vigneault is like, well, I like what I saw in the first, not so much in the second. I like what we did in the third. We had a lot of shots. We just lost. Okay, and he goes, you got to follow the process.
Yeah.
And then Mike Babcock's like, well, I like the jump in the first. Second, we lost a few faceoffs. Third, hey, we were right in it right until the end, but you got to go with the process. And it's like all of a sudden now, coaches are doing their best to really say nothing and deflect and get out of there when they're losing like this.
Kev, I use the comparison of this is like an editor getting a game story from a reporter, which is useless. Nobody wants game stories anymore. And all we're getting from Vigneault and Babcock are a game story analysis of what their teams did. They're not telling us what they did wrong. They don't want to say what they did wrong. They're just using generalities where, like, Mike Babcock has said more than a few times, give me $1 for every time he said it. Well, the puck ended up in our net. Why the hell did it end up in their net? Of course, it's because your defense sucks. That's why. I mean,
yeah, it really is. There's a lot of coach speak out there. I mean, it was reminiscent of last season when the Predators' power play was so poor, and Peter Laviolette invariably said regularly, "Well, we're almost there. We're just you can just feel it. We're going to turn the corner."
Right.
And but he couldn't really explain, why he thought they were there. And I saw it earlier this season with Jim Harbaugh, where they didn't get any points, and he made some comment about that, like he feels like the offense is right there, but nobody had seen any points. Well, as it turned out, he was right. They, the very next game they started scoring, and now they haven't stopped scoring.
But Kev, here's what we're learning though, like the Flyers right now, to me, don't have enough speed at the center position or on defense, and teams are able to skate around them. The Leafs have that speed, but they can't play good enough defense.
Right.
So at the end of the day, the common denominator here is you still have to be strong defensively, and if you're not, it almost doesn't matter how good your offense is.
And last night they played better defense. They were more energetic. They stuck in the game, and they were undone by, again, their special teams and a giveaway. And when they're not a strong defensive team, I think it probably would behoove them to try to play a more wide open game, because not too many teams can stick with them when you have Matthews and Nylander and Marner and Tavares. But I think that's against Babcock's philosophy. Now, the teams that I brought up, Buffalo, Philadelphia, Calgary, and Toronto. It's like panic in all these cities because Buffalo's lost 8 of the last 9. Toronto's lost 6 straight. Calgary the last 5. I think Philly the last 4. They're all 2 points behind the wild card. So all this panic, and they're not even 10 points out of the playoffs. It's not like
the loser point. If the loser point wasn't in effect, it would look a lot worse for these teams. Like the Flyers are 10-7-4.
Right.
They're 4-6-1 on the road. They're 6-1-3 at home. That's even a little misleading because they look like a completely different team when they're at home compared to where on the road. When they're at home, all of a sudden their offense is freewheeling and it clicks and everybody seems to know what to do. And then when they're on the road, it's the exact opposite. And it's I can't answer it, but all these teams, we didn't have, and again, Kev, we brought this up the other day. There's like 27% of games now are going into overtime.
Yeah.
And when it becomes to like down to like the last 3 minutes in the game, the motive of both teams is to go into overtime and walk away with a point.
Right.
Because they know it'll keep them alive in the standings. And then if they can wrestle the extra point, they do it. But the problem is you do that to enough times to a team in your division or your conference, it's going to screw you in the end.
Yeah, though, but I don't mind that. It's just it's just part and parcel of how close the competition is now.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I don't know about you, but I've made this comment that the overtimes this year have been incredible. Like I watch,
I'm watching some that aren't so incredible. Some good, some bad.
Yeah, I think I was at the worst one, Kev. It was Arizona Buffalo, and the shots were 1-0.
Oh well,
and they kept backing out into the neutral zone. Now the Philadelphia Toronto one, Russ, that was good, wasn't that? But
the lady voice on my phone was going to interject in our conversation, and I had to cut her off because she said she didn't know what I meant by that. And I'm like, listen, I hear that enough in my house every day of the week. I don't need to hear it again.
But I've seen some incredible overtimes. But, it's so the difference between the top and the middle of the pack is so slim that, it doesn't take much. But saying all that, I brought this up. If you look at the teams now that were out, this was 2 days ago, so I'm assuming everybody's still out. Right. But Tampa, Nashville, Calgary, Toronto. Who did you just say?
San Jose.
San Jose. Those 5 teams are all out of a playoff spot right now. How many of those teams are going to make it back in? Because what that means is you got to knock 5 out.
Right.
And of some of the newcomers and stuff, like I don't think Arizona is going anywhere. People keep saying they're going to fall. They're the best defensive team in the league right now. Leading in goals against, and Kemper's playing well. They're getting enough goals. I don't know who's falling out to get room for all of those 5.
No, that's a fair point. Like I've been saying all year, Montreal is staying in it on the will of Carey Price. But
but losing Drouin and losing
they could get knocked out for sure. The Islanders have had such a good start now. There's no way they're getting knocked out. Not in the regular season. But, there's some weird things going on. Like Boston's undefeated at home, but they're 7-0-4. So
yeah, it's all right though. If you get points and all,
points, and they're doing it right now without Krug and without Bergeron. So I mean, which is that's the usual MO. It's like they lost Bergeron and Chara last year in November, I think, for an entire month, and they were fine. It's like they did.
Here's the problem if you're a Flyers fan and maybe even a Penguins fan. When you have teams on the outside that are Toronto and Tampa, that's a problem. Because those are 2 teams that you expected to be in the playoffs anyhow. And if you're just barely ahead of them, you are going to have to be watching them out for them all year.
Yeah, no, that's right. No, that's fair. Although I give the Penguins just tremendous credit.
Oh, Me too.
Yeah, like what, everybody thought, well, now, and I even wrote they were at the crossroads. Because obviously Malkin and Crosby are getting longer in the tooth. And this year they've both been hurt. Both will have been out for extended periods. And everybody has predicted doom and gloom. As soon as that happened, there's no depth. It's been eroded. And lo and behold, they're still in it. They're still doing their thing. I mean, I think they're an example of winning culture.
Yeah.
They just sort of plug guys in, and everybody knows, hey, expectations are high.
I thought they might end the Islanders streak, and for a while, I said that yesterday, and for a while it looked good, and then the Islanders just were too good for that. But Kev, let me ask you this: simply because New Jersey is close to the bottom now, do you give any % chance of Taylor Hall coming back at this point?
I don't. He would have been signed by now.
Yeah, that's what I feel.
Yeah. This is we've learned that there's the Tavares lesson.
Yes.
Because we kept thinking, well, surely he'll come back. He was born to be an Islander, and just a classy guy, and all the reasons you just figured. I remember seeing John at the NHL media tour, and I said, you surprised me. He goes, I surprised myself. He said,
and I'll tell you something right now. Ray Shero is set up to, I think, hit a home run, because if Taylor Hall is healthy, and you're telling me that he won't swing a race by being acquired by, say, a Colorado or somebody who has the cap room. I mean, I think he's a difference-making player, and I think Shero can get probably a first-round pick and a really good prospect, and maybe even something more than that, because he's that impactful of a player.
Speaking of Colorado, and by the way, I also think Colorado is the number one contender for Taylor Hall.
Yep.
But I was on a betting show with Bob Duff, and we were talking about the odds of winning the Rookie of the Year. And, we went through the usual names that you would associate. And this was a couple of weeks back. And the name I said, who we're all going to be talking about in the second half of the season is Cale Makar.
We're talking about him already.
Yeah. And, he has just been phenomenal. I just don't. I mean, I get that there's a lot of good rookies out, but Cale Makar has just been, and it's like he was born to play with the Colorado offense the way it is.
Yeah, he's such a difference maker. Like, I had him in my preseason top 6, Kev, and I didn't say he was the leader for me because I don't like to brand anybody right before the season starts. But once the season started, I was going Cale Makar. The reason is, though, first off, when he was with Team Canada and won the World Juniors, he played a role. Like, he was so much better than the ice time they gave him.
Right.
And so you could even see then where he was going to be an elite player, but they didn't see it. And that's why he didn't go and join the Olympic team, because he didn't want to get screwed again. So he went back to college.
He was like a 7th defenseman for them. Yeah,
he was like the 7th defenseman. And so then last year he has a long run in the national championships, and you could just see, and I got to see him a lot more with that team, and he was the engine for that team. Like, I don't think I've ever seen a defenseman run an offense like a quarterback, but he was doing it. And that team only went as far as he was going to go.
Right.
And they went pretty far. So I didn't think there was going to be a problem transitioning, simply because of the way he skates and the way he sees the ice. And not only is he, and I've said this a few weeks ago, and I'll say it to you, not only is he, a Calder candidate, he's a Norris candidate.
But yeah, go ahead.
Well, I'm not so sure I'm ready to say that, but I've been so impressed with him, with how he's played, and he's got no penalty minutes. I don't think. If I'm not mistaken, I don't think he has any penalty minutes, which is a real oddity in itself. So, he's just been impressive, and he definitely is.
No penalty minutes. I didn't realize that. That's amazing.
Yeah.
For the Norris, he's got 23 points in 21 games, no penalty minutes. He's a +9, 2 game-winning goals. Like, even off the top of your head, there's not many defensemen better than that.
No, not offensively, but I think he has a lot to learn defensively. And we like, even though we're always wowed by the offensive numbers, and historically the writers have always leaned toward more offensive guys, I do think they expect some semblance of reasonable to above average defense. So, and I would say Cale Makar, probably, isn't at the same level as a lot of veterans.
Just to touch on some news and notes here, Garnet Hathaway gets suspended for 3 games for spitting on Erica Branson.
I stop you there. It was really funny because I was on Sirius XM yesterday with Mick Kern, and I said they ought to throw the book at him. And he goes, "All right, how many games?" And I said 3 or 4. And he goes, "Well, how's that throwing the book at him?" I'm like, because in the past they would have just fined him or maybe given him a game.
I mean, it wasn't just like a little spittle. It was it was hocking a loogie. It was disgusting.
You reach back for that.
For volume of spit, the 3 games is accurate. Now, the NHL announced, the PA announced Bobby Ryan is going to be away from the team, and he's in the player assistance program. I'm assuming that's for some sort of substance abuse. We heard Ryan was healthy scratched earlier in the season. I can only assume that it had something to do with this. This is a former second overall pick, a guy who's had a lot of success in the league, a lot of injuries, Kev. So, I know Ottawa is not a team that's competitive right now, but, this is a little bit of a scary situation for Bobby Ryan.
Well, I'm not going to assume anything.
Right.
I have no idea what's going on there in terms of what actually he's entered the program for. But this is what I would tell you about Bobby Ryan. He has gone through so much in his life, and most of it is not his fault. Mm-hmm. And he's an incredibly nice man. Like I just always enjoy, and I'm sure Russell back. I always enjoy talking to Bobby Ryan.
Absolutely.
He is just fun to talk to. He's always got the time to deal with the media, and I whatever it is that he's going through now, I'm just so rooting for him, and I hope this works out for him. And this program is designed to help people, and that's why we don't get information about they want these players to go through whatever they're going through without the pressure on it. So I saw on social media, we all know can be a pretty harsh place.
Sure.
I saw so many people basically said exactly what I did. Like, all we all care about is whatever he's going through, we hope the best for him, because he really is a good guy.
And if it's not what I had just said, I apologize. But I know that in previous instances it's been that. So
nothing wrong with what you said. I mean that's normally what it is, but we just don't know exactly.
No, it's true.
Yeah.
No.
Good, Russ.
I was gonna say, Kev, the other day, maybe it was like a week ago, Gary Bettman.
Barry Bettman, I really like that.
I know. Even if I tried, I couldn't do it again. He threw cold water again on the Olympics, talking about all the negatives and none of the positives. What's the end game here with that?
Well, I have actually sat down and chatted with Gary about this, I can't say that either. I really liked it. Barry Bettman. I've actually talked about this, that he and I have really agreed to disagree. I do have an understanding of why the NHL doesn't want to go to the Olympics. I get it. I mean, they've explained it to me, and Gary kept repeating as if I didn't get it. I do get it. What they're saying is that some teams struggle with the reboot once we come back from the Olympics.
Sure.
Right.
Secondly, the risk of injury is significant. It has impact. This is
really, Tavares is the only guy we can come up with that really had an impact. I don't think there's been
Tavares in 2014.
Yeah, the Hasek injury. There's been like 3 or 4 injuries that have had an impact, but the risk is there. Like, all that is real. I get all that. I understand that, and this is a big one. The NHL is treated poorly.
Yes,
and they get nothing out of this from the IHF. They really are treated poorly, right to the point where, and I know fans don't care about this, but if you're running a business, the people they send over there, the owners and the GMs, they're not treated well. Like, they're just there's no special favors, and as Gary said, we're supplying the product.
Right, but the product wants to do it, and that's the problem, right? The players want to do it.
That's why I think this is a little nugget in the owners category for the CBA negotiations, because they don't want to go, but the players do want to go. So that's a big negotiating.
Well, and the players haven't always been treated as well as the Players Association would like either. I mean, there's just been a lot of problems with it. Now, saying all that, like, it's still the most wonderful thing in the world to showcase the game of hockey.
Right.
Like, I get it that there is no tangible evidence that they can find that it's helping. But, logic says that if the whole world is watching and you send your best players over there and the tournament is better and more exciting and has more name recognition, then it's going to help. But they just don't see it that way. And I sat with Gary and we talked about this, and this is really sincere. Like, there's no strategy here to use it as a bargaining chip. They legitimately do not want to go.
Hold on, I have breaking news. So at the Hall of Fame ceremony, Renee Fassel ended it with looking at Gary Bettman and saying, "I hope we see you in Beijing in 2022."
Yeah, no, it's. I mean, I get it. Here's another thing too that I was wrong about. I covered the Olympics pre NHL, and it to me even then it was the greatest thing in the world. Like, more people pay attention to the Olympics than pay attention to the NHL. And I wrote a story about Ray LeBlanc, who was a no-name goalie who was turning it on in the Olympics, was playing out of his head. And I remember Art Berglund said more people in the United States know who Ray LeBlanc is than Brian Leetch. And that was true, because I mean the whole world was watching, and a lot of non-hockey fans who didn't know who Brian Leetch was, couldn't name 6 NHL teams, but they knew who Ray LeBlanc was because he was all over the television. And I thought that once the NHL players left, that we would just return to that time and people would still be excited about the tournament. But that was not true for the NHL players in 2018. The women's tournament, I think, did draw a lot of attention, but I found that the interest in when the NHL players were not there was not as great as it was in the old days before. Now that we've seen the NHL players, we really want to see them at the Olympics.
Kevin, it took every bit of self-control in my body when I was at the Sabres game on the weekend, and I bumped into Craig Patrick, and I don't know Craig Patrick, but it took every bit of self-control not to pelt him with questions about 1980. So Olympic hockey, I mean, I would love to see the NHL players and the league go to China in 2022 if it's in their best interest, but I don't know if it is. 2 quick things, and we'll end the show. One, Kev, have you heard anything in terms of any progress regarding Puljujarvi and him potentially being moved before December 1st?
No, there's been a lot of talk in Detroit about how that Holland and Yzerman have had numerous discussions on it, and that would certainly be in keeping with Yzerman's style,
right?
The type of move he would make. So I don't know. I mean, I've heard talk about Zadina and Puljujarvi being involved in a trade. I've heard.
I would be hesitant to make that one if I were Detroit. I would. So,
but there's you never know what's true because Steve Yzerman plays very close to the best. Yeah. Like I always tell people, it's kind of like Lou Lamoriello. When people would float Lou Lamoriello rumors, I'd say, I know you're lying or somebody's pulling your leg, because he doesn't allow any rumors out. He even tells the opposing team he's training with, if it gets out, we're done. So and Steve Yzerman is very similar. Like he doesn't think this game. So.
Me personally, I think they would be better off trading Rasmussen for Puljujarvi.
Well,
yeah, I don't think if you're suggesting they were was Zadina for Puljujarvi, I don't think it was ever that.
Okay.
Yeah, no, it was.
I would do Rasmussen for him because at the end of the day, they do have some similarities, and the fact that Yzerman doesn't really love him, as you've pointed out, maybe Holland would give him a chance and say, you know what, it's something, because they're going to run into a spot where they're going to start, the value is going to start decreasing on Puljujarvi very quickly.
And the other thing I wanted to ask was at the GM's meetings, or the meetings that just took place, there is going to be a review in March of the offsides situation, and it all stemmed from the call on Charlie Coyle last week. Now, Kev, I've been a proponent of breaking the plane of the plane of the, and not the
me too.
And I'm sorry, I think that solves most of the problems that they run in with, because it's almost impossible to see whether the skate is on the ice completely. I think if they put cameras on the blue line, that it eliminates it. So there's your solution. I think it's easy. But
Mike, they're going into that meeting and they're going to be like, well, we talked about it. We're not changing it.
My God.
Yeah.
Would that shock you, Kev?
If I had to guess, I'd guess they're not changing it either.
See?
So that's just a guess.
It's so ridiculous. Okay, great show. We'll be back tomorrow with another edition of the Hockey Buzzcast. For Kevin Allen, for Russ Cohen, I'm Michael Agello. Thanks for watching, and remember, without the buzz, it's just hockey.